Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, federal student loan borrowers can begin applying for relief. A look at the potential impact on black borrowers. A WTTW News ProPublica investigation into patient deaths at a far south side community hospital. A benefit concert supporting families affected by last month's building explosion in the Austin neighborhood. The theater run for the documentary Punch 9 for Harold Washington has been extended. Hear from the film's producers and how you can see it this week.
I wanted it to look non-traditional. I didn't want the lines to be clean.
And exploring the impact art can have on mental health. All that coming up, but our first story tonight, applying for the federal student loan relief program. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Help is on the way for a significant number of Americans with student debt. The initial application is now open for the Biden administration's federal student loan forgiveness program. The administration says borrowers who apply by mid-November should see forgiveness before January 1st. This is all, of course, pending the outcome of several lawsuits. Borrowers can qualify to have up to $10,000 forgiven if their loan is held by the Department of Education and they make less than $125,000 individually or $250,000 for a family. For those who received Pell Grants, up to $20,000 can be forgiven. And for many black Americans, this is, of course, big news as nearly 60% of black students receive Pell Grants each year. Joining us now are Maureen Amos, Executive Director of Financial Aid, Scholarships, and Student Employment at Northeastern Illinois University, and Richard Hayes, Associate Vice Chancellor of Financial Aid and Scholarships at the City Colleges of Chicago. And thanks to you both for joining us. Richard Hayes, let's start with you, please. What information do people need to apply for this?
So the new application that came out, it's a very, very simple application, and I think the Department of Education thought about that when they came out with this application. It literally takes about a minute to do the application. So before, students will have to go to studentloans.gov, they will have to know an FSA ID. It was somewhat of an arduous process for those students, but now they just need to know their social security number, their name, date of birth, and they fill that out, and then the Department of Education will reach back out to them if they need additional information about their student loans. It's really simple with this new application.
What's the impact of it being so simple? Obviously, you get more people apply, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's the whole point here. I mean, myself, as well as other financial aid professionals across Illinois, we hear the stories all the time about students having trouble with the FAFSA application. So they thought about that in mind and said, hey, we want to make sure that this reach students, we want to make sure it's easy, and then we can do the hard work on the back end.
Maureen Amos, Pell Grants haven't kept up with the increase in tuition costs over the years. Is $20,000 enough money to really help the students that the student communities that your institution serves?
Absolutely. At my institution, our average student loan indebtedness is under $10,000. And on average, if we look at current research for black students tend to borrow between $40,000 and $60,000. So even $20,000 as a loan cancellation or forgiveness is very beneficial to them.
It could cut it in half.
Absolutely.
Richard Hayes, as we mentioned, many black students receive Pell Grants. What do you think the effect of this loan relief will be on the economic health of black Americans?
Well, we're looking at the students at City College of Chicago. One would think that we have a lot of high school students, but truthfully, we have a very diverse population of adult students who have to deal with varying responsibilities of taking care of their families, of taking care of their children. So something that they wouldn't have to worry about with debt forgiveness would be a huge impact, so they can focus on other things like taking care of their families.
Maureen Amos, speaking of applications that might be kind of complicated, the Public Service Loan Program, that application is a bit complicated. It involves, getting buy-in from your employer, but it's another avenue for relief. Can you explain what that is and who can apply for it?
Any person who has federal direct loans, parent loans, Perkins loans, they can go through their servicer and apply to have loans forgiveness, as well as if they are working for a not-for-profit organization. So it's just applying through your loan servicer. And it is kind of complicated, and then you need your employer to, support the fact that you work for a not-for-profit organization. It's a waiting game once the application is submitted so that you can hear back from your servicer. I've heard some good news, though, from some of our borrowers that they do get the response within the time period that they've been told. So.
And there's also been sort of a reprieve through the end of October, correct, for more people to be eligible for that. Give us a quick update on that.
Yeah, that was extended. It was extended twice, actually, so that more students can get or take advantage of it. Because of the complexity with filling out the application and from hearing back, the Department of Ed realized that they needed to offer it for more people to get involved with. It was hard for people to actually engage and take advantage of it because there were questions about, well, which loans qualify and which do not. All of that needed to be clarified for borrowers. So once all of that was clarified, they needed to allow more time for people to apply.
Richard Hayes, what about private student debt? Is there any recourse for students who have taken on private debt to pay for their education?
Yeah, I mean, the main recourse is setting up a student repayment plan with Department of Education for your private debt. But as far as with this particular debt forgiveness, no, there isn't any recourse there. But it's about getting with your financial aid professional, setting up a payment plan. They have a lot of payment plans that are based on income. So if a student is not making as much as they thought they would, when they came out of college, they can use that as a avenue to pay a lesser payment if they have a private student loan. So it's really about communicating with your servicer with those private student loans and letting them know about your situation. The worst possible thing you can do is not say anything, not talk to them, not call them, or avoid them. That's how students end up in default.
And I mean, what more can be done, Richard, about helping students avoid private loan debt, but, avoiding substantial amounts of student loan debt in the first place?
Well, I think one thing here in Illinois is that we have really good tuition rates for our public universities, as well as City College of Chicago, as well as Northeastern Illinois University. We don't charge a whole lot of money. So one thing students can do is they can look at options that are in-state for those first few years or those first 4 years when they're trying to go to school, because we have a ton of grant options. We had HERF dollars that came out. We have varying scholarship options. Even at City College of Chicago, we have over 40 different scholarships, and we have scholarships for our undocumented student population as well. But the problem is, I think students run into is they don't know where to look. And so it's about talking to your admissions advisors or talking to your professors at the school so they can find where to go to get those particular resources.
Maureen, the Biden administration has more in their plan. What can you tell us about what might be coming next?
Yeah, there's a three-step plan to the student debt relief. So the first one obviously was to allow an extension to the repayment pause. So that's been extended till the end of December. In addition to that, we've got this loan cancellation, which is very beneficial. After that, we've got a look at students who, and I've got some data here that I can share.
Maybe one data point, because we're almost
out of time.
One data point,
make the student loan system more manageable for current and future borrowers. What we want to do is make sure that borrowers pay no more than 5% of discretionary income. Okay.
So more to come, but
more to come.
Students need to be looking out for.
Yes.
And borrowers in particular.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And then the information would come from their servicers. No text messages and no phone calls.
Don't fall for any scams. Thank
Absolutely.
you to Maureen Amos and Richard Hayes for joining us. A building explosion in the Austin community last month left one person dead, several injured, and even more families without a place to live. Neighboring organization Circle Urban Ministries is planning a concert to raise funds for those families as they work to rebuild.
It's a celebration of creative arts. You can expect to see Jasmine Martell. You can expect to see Shaniqua Hoskins, Dominique Bourget, Terrell Ray Sean, and the Tommies are coming, and Darius Brooks will be there as well. So it's Darius Brooks and the Tommies reunion choir. September 20th, there was a huge explosion 2 doors down from the Circle Urban Ministries campus. And when I shared that information with all of the artists, they said, listen, well, let's focus on giving the families a good time and helping the families rebuild. Our goal is to show the families who were impacted by the explosion that we are here with you. We want to help you rebuild. The families will be, many of the members of the families will be there, and so come out and celebrate with us.
And again, the concert is set for Saturday, October 29th, and you can find more about that on our website. It's been open for nearly a century on Chicago's far south side, serving a majority black patient population, including neighbors from nearby Roseland, Pullman, and West Pullman. In 2020, nearly 92% of its patients received Medicare or Medicaid, and the hospital has long faced financial struggles and staffing woes. In recent years, the hospital has also faced inspections, lawsuits, and complaints that raise concerns about quality of care and patient deaths. Chicago Tonight story in partnership with ProPublica.
Melisha Boss did not want her father to go into Roseland Community Hospital.
Well, I know it was a bad hospital. Years of neglect there, years of people not being treated right. So it's just, they have history.
And in any case, her father's doctors were at the University of Chicago Hospital, not Roseland.
I spoke to the ambulance guy, and he told me they had to take him to Roseland because that was the nearest hospital, and that was the procedure that they had to follow.
Boss's father, Wilford, grew up on the west side, where his parents owned and ran apartment buildings. Wilford and his former wife raised Melisha and her two siblings on the north side.
He was a good person. He was very smart, dressed nice, very classy, very, respected.
As he got older, he moved into an assisted living building on the south side and started having issues with his breathing.
It was not abnormal for him to go to the hospital if the nursing home felt he needed to go. He was against going to Roseland. And he was like, oh, I said, well, just go there and we'll try to get you, out there as soon as possible.
But Boss's skepticism of Roseland's quality of care may well have been justified, with hospital monitors taking a close look at the facility over the last several years.
Over the course of the last 5 years, starting in 2017, Roseland has been subject to more deficiencies findings than any other hospital in the state.
Since 2017, Roseland's received at least 72 citations for deficiencies in care, more than any other hospital in Illinois regulated by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And since 2017, Roseland received 8 citations for putting patients in immediate jeopardy of injury or death.
They, in 2020, were hit with an immediate jeopardy warning after a pregnant woman was admitted here to the hospital but did not receive the required medical assessment. That woman later died. They've also been hit with various different deficiencies related to immediate jeopardy situations related to the level of staffing here at Roseland and the level of supervision that those staffers actually provided to patients.
Since 2020, errors or neglect have contributed to the deaths of at least 7 Roseland patients, according to federal reports. At least 1 patient was pregnant. In a written response to ProPublica and WTTW News, the hospital's chief quality officer said everyone at the organization grieves for the loss of life, but that the pandemic strained staffing throughout all healthcare systems, especially urban and safety net hospitals. Roseland's experiences mirror those of other hospitals and caregivers over the past nearly 3 years. But staffing problems at Roseland predate COVID-19, as the hospital's former emergency department director told WTTW News in 2016.
There's a chronic shortage because there's a challenge in recruiting staff members to work in a community hospital.
Hospital CEO Tim Egan declined to speak with WTTW News and ProPublica for this story, but back in 2016, he had a dire warning for what could happen if the hospital closed.
Oh, I think people would absolutely die. There's no question about it. Anyone from outside of the community can say the ambulances can take the patients to the next hospital. Well, you can see on the map the next hospital is 7 miles away, and that's life or death time for a patient who's critically injured.
A representative for Egan says in a statement he is proud of the heroism of the Roseland Hospital staff and the community they are privileged to serve. Despite the critical role the hospital sees itself playing, experts say even one immediate jeopardy citation is a serious breach in care. The hospital is now back in good standing with regulators. In order to stay in good standing after putting patients in immediate jeopardy 8 times in the last 5 years, the hospital was required to put a corrective plan in place that it said would
enhance the safety culture of the entire hospital, unit by unit. The hospital is currently in good standing, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the deeper systemic problems that may plague the hospital are corrected.
That hospital is in trouble, and it needs to take these citations seriously.
Lisa McGiffert spent 15 years running the Safe Patient Project for Consumer Reports and now leads the Patient Safety Action Network. She says hospitals have to meet federal standards for things like infection control, nurse-to-patient ratios, and air quality.
These standards are basic, and every hospital should meet them. Some hospitals may be able to meet them with more bells and whistles than others, but I believe the standards should be the same, and that no matter where patients live and go to the hospital, they should expect those same standards.
In a statement, Egan's representative says, the entire staff of Roseland Hospital served the disinvested community of the far south side of Chicago through the global pandemic, the challenges of which the hospital and the community continue to face to this day. Severely ill patients from our community presented in our Safety Net Hospital's emergency department, and sadly, some did not survive. One of those patients was Melisha Boss's father, Wilford. He went into Roseland on a Friday morning in June of last year. He was pronounced dead hours later.
And, you know, his birthday just passed. I know that I still haven't been able to grieve, and I know that that's important. So I'm just at the point, I won't say numb because I know everything has happened, but just the grieving process hasn't came for me yet.
According to a whistleblower's allegation, Boss shouldn't have had to grieve. A complaint filed with state health officials by a former Roseland physician says the ER doctor who treated Wilford Boss didn't recognize that Boss was in respiratory distress and failed to act quickly enough after multiple nurses came directly to him asking him to intubate and stabilize the patient's airway.
Yeah, that's bad.
Melisha Boss saw the complaint for the first time when we sat down for an interview.
It's just sad. It's so sad.
Roseland declined to comment on any specific deaths. Its chief quality officer said in a statement, "Patient safety is a priority. We are committed to further improving the culture of safety at Roseland." For Boss, it's difficult to think about what she might want to come out of her experience.
I would never say, like, take something away from the community. They probably need the hospital, but if the hospital is not serving its purpose, I mean, I would want to see the hospital get better.
For Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Nick Blumberg.
In addition to Wilford Boss, that whistleblower complaint also included a second patient who died under similar circumstances. And Roseland's facing at least 4 lawsuits over patient deaths. The hospital's chief quality officer says the hospital has worked to improve patient safety practices across the facility. And of course, we've got much more about the accusations that Roseland is facing and its response on our website. There's more Chicago Tonight Black Voices right after this. In many ways, the story of Mayor Harold Washington's rise to City Hall is distinctly Chicagoan. But the makers of the documentary Punch 9 for Harold Washington say his election had reverberations far beyond Chicago's borders. The film shows Washington's journey to the mayor's office, the racist resistance to his candidacy, as well as the historic black-brown coalitions formed to support him. It also shows how his election offered a blueprint for progressive organizing across the country. Director Joe Winston and co-producer Raymond Lambert say they're hoping to keep this Chicago story on the city's theater screens for as long as possible.
He was one of those folks, you know what I mean? And I've heard the quote that's like, they don't grow on bunches like grapes. They come along once in a generation, and he certainly was one of those people. The turnout of Black registered voters was 92%. And Gary Rivlin has a wonderful quote in the film where he talks about a precinct where I guess they were midway through the day and they called down to City Hall to say, what do we do because everyone in the precinct has voted?
The mission of Punch 9, the initial impetus, was the realization that the Harold Washington story is a national story. It has ramifications beyond the past and ramifications beyond Chicago, because what Chicago went through during Harold Washington's time is like a playbook for how to build progressive coalitions. We've shown this movie from coast to coast, more than 20 cities, I think, and people outside Chicago are shocked that they don't already know this story. And when they see these events from the past, like the council wars being played out again when Obama becomes president and there's the obstruction in Congress, people are just, they feel like they're going in a time machine and they're seeing our own struggles played out in the past.
We knew this was going to be our toughest market because folks are so emotionally invested in Harold Washington and his legacy that we were bracing ourselves for, okay, we're going to have to get this right. And people around the country have responded incredibly favorably also. But we knew here that it was going to have to be right. And I think this is proving that it definitely is resonating with folks.
AMC theaters in Chicago will be showing at least 2 locations, one on the north side, one on the south side, through at least Thursday, the 27th of October. And they decide each week based on the previous week's performance whether to extend it. Let's keep it going. Let's break some records here, Chicago.
And that first speaker that you heard from, that was actually Raymond Lambert, co-producer of Punch 9 for Harold Washington. The second was Joe Winston, director of Punch 9 for Harold Washington. You'll find more on where to see Punch 9 for Harold Washington on our website. An Inglewood native is showing the impact art therapy can have on mental health in an exhibition titled Therapeutic Reasoning. Arts correspondent Angel Edo takes us to a very serious gallery in River West for a look. And a note, some of the upcoming artwork is graphic.
When you think of the phrase, a lot can change in a year, it's one that could best be used to describe artist David Ellis and the role expression has played in his life.
So I had really aggressive suicidal ideation, and one of the first things that was listed on the safety list for me was to paint when I felt like really aggressive ideation come on. And so that's what I started doing. I just went back to what I remembered made me happy when I was younger, and it was just drawing.
When it came time to pay rent, Ellis, or E-Works, decided to sell paintings on his front lawn. It grew so successful, the self-taught artist decided to do it monthly.
And I had my first 2 sales, and as soon as people stop and are buying art and other people see people buying art, it just pulls more people's eyes in your direction.
Whether it be for himself or commissions, E-Works says he needs to paint every day.
People kind of ignore the need for art. And ignore the place it holds in society that gives everything meaning. Art is needed.
He shows that need for self-expression in a new exhibit at a very serious gallery in River West, where he documents societal moments in time with acrylic on canvas, each piece taking no more than a day.
So I'll take screenshots of celebrity moments, of pop culture moments, of things that are meaningful to me. Nothing is super intentional in terms of like, what I create, it's always been for therapeutic reasons. Like I create to feel good, to feel normal, to balance myself, to center myself. It's never been about just solely the art, it's been about my healing.
While art and self-expression have helped E-Works improve his mental state, it's a practice he says he'll always have to work on.
I feel like it's important to know that it's not the end-all solution. It's not this thing that's gonna make you like just healthy for the rest of your life. It's a thing that you always know you can come back to center yourself.
The characters E-Works has created live in what he's called the day room and hopes his art dismantles racism, homophobia, and elitism, among other things.
Art has always been very intergenerational. I can engage with young people, people my age, older black folks. Oh, you don't like the picture of the penis? Wow, let's talk about it. A lot of it kind of speaks to my sexuality. I identify as fluid. So it's a talking point, and it creates like a bigger space for healing and understanding intergenerationally.
While the art eWorks creates is for his personal healing, he hopes it inspires Black and brown children specifically.
The investment has to start at some point, and there's no way around not spending the money and not spending the time and not practicing. Take creative agency over what it is you love to do, and like, don't let anybody else pilot your life decisions.
For Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
And you can see Therapeutic Reasoning at a Very Serious Gallery in River West through Sunday. And that's our show for this weekend. If you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Black Voices and Latino Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And join me and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you so much for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports free educational initiatives in the legal profession.